Alright, I think I'm all good. I was just, move this. Okay. Alright, let's get started. We are reading today. We're going to do a little audible. We're doing Assata Shakur's autobiography. Oh no, I lost a page. Okay, no, I didn't. We're on chapter 6 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. My mother and stepfather broke up, and my mother and my stepfather broke up, and my mother, my sister, and I moved to a new apartment in a housing complex in South Jamaica, near New York Boulevard, and Fuck. One side was a project, and the other side was a co-op where we lived. But they looked about the same to me. Compared to Jamaica, Parsons Garden, where we had lived, was a little black dot. South Jamaica, Hollis, Bricktown, St. Albans, Springfield Gardens, South Ozone, etc., were all joined together to make up a black city. You could live your life in Jamaica, and the only time you'd ever see a white face was when you shopped on Jamaica Avenue or when the insurance man came around. At one time, Jamaica was all white. Black people had moved out to the island to escape the ghettos of Harlem and Brooklyn. They bought old houses at exorbitant prices, only to find that within a few years their nice neighborhood had turned into crime-ridden, drug-ridden, and poverty-stricken places they had just ran from. I loved Jamaica, and I was just starting to get into the beat of it and to know my way around when my mother and I had one of our terrible arguments. I don't even remember what the argument was about, but I was hard-headed, stubborn, and under the impression that a grave injustice had been done to me. The next day, I got up, packed my clothes, and headed straight for the village. Greenwich Village was where artists and musicians and all kinds of weird people were supposed to live. Oh no. I don't know what that word is. I was fascinated by the people that may have lived there, even though I had never met any. I figured that if I belonged to any place, it must be the village. This is Assata Shakur's autobiography. I walked around with the same suitcase until I was exhausted. I remember thinking that people here didn't look that different from anybody else. I found a place to check my suitcase and spent the rest of the day going around door to door asking people if they had any jobs available. Most didn't even look up at me. They just gave me a flat no. At the end of the day, I was tired, disgusted, and hungry. I had nowhere to live, and not the slightest idea. I'm sorry. Damn, I lost my spot now. Let's see, where were we? I had nowhere to live, and not the slightest idea where I was going to do next. I went back for my suitcase, but the place was closed. After that, I just walked around aimlessly until I reached a little park. I sat down on a bench, tired as hell, and unable to take another step. After a while, a little white guy with bumps on his face sat down next to me and started talking. I didn't understand half the things he said, but he seemed nice enough. When he asked me if I wanted to go to a restaurant across the street with him, I gladly accepted. I was starving. It was an Italian restaurant, and the scent in the air was heavenly. I ordered enough to feed a mule. The guy talked all about these people I didn't know and about his job. He kept saying people on his job were conspiring to get him fired. Let me share this real quick. Apologize. What did they do? I asked them. They did everything. They stole my files and my paperwork and my papers, and then they spread rumors about me. He said he was some kind of engineer. I should never have trusted them. I should never have trusted them. He kept saying, you can't trust anybody. When the food came, I ate like I had spent a lifetime starving. When the food came, I ate like I had spent a lifetime starving. Doesn't this food taste funny to you? The guy asked. I tasted some more, and it was good. There's nothing wrong with mine, I told him. There's something wrong with this food, he said loudly. What did they do to my food? The waiter came and tried to calm the guy down. I don't understand, the waiter said. But if you'd like, I'll bring you another plate. Although the guy said it was better, he still thought it tasted a little funny. To change the subject, I told him a sad story about my mother being in the hospital and that I had nowhere to stay. Oh, you can stay at my place, he said. And then seeing how I was looking at him, he added, I have an extra bed. No funny business? No funny business, he promised. He paid the check and we left. His apartment was a tiny one-bedroom unit with a dirty kitchen and a green, moldy-looking rug. The living room was neat and sterile. There was a plain brown couch that turned into a bed. I asked him for something to sleep in and plopped down onto the bed. He kept talking, but I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. After a while, he went to his bedroom and set off the lights. I woke up during the night to go to the bathroom, stumbling around disoriented until I finally found it. When I came out of the bathroom, I went to the kitchen for some water. While I was in there, the guy came in. His face was all puffed up and red. What are you looking for? Some water. Oh no, you're not, he screeched. You've been creeping around this house looking for something. What? I asked. You're crazy. Oh no, my dear. That's what they want me to think. I'm not crazy in the least. What were you looking for? Who sent you? You didn't find anything, did you? Well, you can tell them I haven't invented anything else for them to steal. I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody sent me to this place. Nobody sent me no place, and I wasn't looking for anything. Oh no. You were just going for a little moonlight stroll. Do you think I'm some kind of fool? I took you in off the street out of kindness, and here you try and deceive me? You really fooled me this time. I never thought they'd send... Oh, damn. Okay, he says, I never thought they'd send... He says the N-word. He says the N-word, the hard R. Then he says, a hard R spy. Okay. Damn, this book is... Okay. So she told him, she said, your mama is a hard R. Is the N word, is a hard R. I told him, and you're a crazy son of a bitch. I threw on my clothes as I cursed him out. Spy, spy, he kept saying. Your mother is a spy, and you can drop dead as far as I'm concerned. I slammed the door and walked out in the early morning. The sun was beginning to come up. I walked until I found a drugstore open and ordered tea and an English muffin. I bought a toothbrush, toothpaste, and some makeup so that I would look older. I was going to get a job if it killed me. I got my suitcase and found a bathroom to wash up in, changed clothes, and checked the suitcase again. I bought a couple of newspapers. This time, I was going to be systematic about it. I saw an ad for a waitress and counter girl. That was something I knew I could do. The place was in downtown Brooklyn. I hopped on the first train in that direction and got there about 8:30. About 8:30 in the morning. The cafeteria was in a factory building and was solely for factory workers. The manager had black and white hair and was big, fat, and sloppy. He wasn't so anxious to hire me at first, so I told him a sob story about coming from down south to help my mother, who was in the hospital, and that I needed a job as soon as possible. Finally, after looking me up and down, he hired me and said I could start right then and there. I was grinning from ear to ear. I was supposed to spend the morning making salads and sandwiches and other things for lunchtime. But around 10 o'clock, all these men started coming for coffee break. The manager had me running around like crazy, toasting bread, buttering buns, and getting the men their orders. Move faster, he kept telling me. Every time he told me to move faster, I tried until it seemed that it wasn't humanly possible for anyone to have moved faster. Then I noticed he was always brushing against me. His hands were always accidentally touching my behind. I'd move his hand away, but that only seemed to make him bolder. Every time I bent over to get something out of the freezer or off the food shelves, he would try to slide his hands up my dress. After a while, I began slapping his hands away. This, too, seemed to make him bolder. Finally, I told him, in a nice, quiet voice, would you please keep your hands off me? Would you keep them to yourself? What are you talking about? He said, acting surprised. I ain't done nothing to you. As the day wore on, he accelerated his shouting at me. Can't you move any faster? He would yell. He would say, get that lead out of your ass. He stopped putting his hands on me for a while, but in about an hour, he was right back to his old tricks. He acted like it was some kind of joke or something. I didn't think it was funny worth a damn. Lunchtime was super busy, and I was moving super fast. After lunch, we started getting ready for afternoon coffee break, and after that, we started getting ready for dinner. Dinner was from 4:30 to 6:30, and 7 was quitting time. When dinner time came, I was tired and miserable. I needed the job desperately, but the manager was driving me wild, putting his hands all over me. When I told him to stop, he would grin throw his hands in the air, and say, "What? What am I doing? What am I doing?" Then he started a new trick. He'd pull the elastic on my panties through the uniform and let it pop like a rubber band. "Stop it," I yelled. "Just stop it." "Stop what? What am I doing?" By the time dinner was over, I know I couldn't take it anymore. Bad as I needed the job, I couldn't take that big fat pig's hands all over me. Just before I was ready to go home, I told him, "Look, if you can't keep your hands to yourself, I'll quit. I can't take it anymore." "What do you mean you'll quit? You're fired. You got lead in your ass and you don't know how to treat your boss. Now get the hell out of here. Just give me my money and I will." "I ain't gonna give you shit," he said, "'cause you ain't did shit. Look, mister, you're gonna pay me my money. I worked hard and I want my money. Come back at the end of the week." "No, I want my money now, and I need it now." "You ain't getting nothing now," I told you. "Come back at the end of the week." No, no. You're giving me my money now. I want my money." "Well, you ain't getting it. I'll call the cops on you," I bluffed. "I'll call the cops on you," he said. "I'll call the cops on you," he said, "if you don't get your ass out of here." "You better give me my money," I repeated, looking wild and about ready to jump out a real bag. Some people from the factory came in and stood at the back of the cafeteria looking. "Keep your voice down," he said, acting like he was going to be cooperative and pay me. "I'll tell you what, you come in that back with me, and I'll pay you for an extra day. I'll even let you keep your job, and if you're good, I'll even give you a little extra change. I'm not going any damn where with you. Just give me my money." Now why do you want to be like that?" he asked, putting his hands on my shoulder. I was hot and I was fit to be tied. "Get your hands off of me," I yelled. "You don't want nobody to know what kind of dog you are." "Well, I'm going to tell everybody. If you don't give me my money, I'm going to make you wish you had. I'm going to tell everyone what you are." I started to walk where people were working in the factory part. All right, he said. "Here's your goddamn money. Just get the hell out of here." The people who had been standing in the back moved up closer to see what was going on. The man went to the register and I counted out my money. I was dead tired and felt like a fool. But at the same time, I kind of felt good inside. I was still in the same boat, but I was $13 richer and I had enough self-respect not to let any old lecherous man fill me up and down my body. I had enough money altogether to rent a cheap hotel room. I got my suitcase and checked into a hotel. I think it was a Hotel Albert. After I had hung up my clothes and taken a shower, I decided to eat something. I decided to get something to eat. Downstairs in the lobby, there was this big, tall, black woman dressed to kill. She had black hair with silver streaks running through it, long false eyelashes, and a lot of makeup. Well, look at the baby," she said, looking straight at me. Please tell me how you wound up in this joint. Are you straight from Alabama, darling? Where you going, honey? I just looked at her. Do you speak, darling? Can you talk? Where are you going, honey? I'm going out to eat, I said, a little wary. Where are you going to eat, love? I don't know. Well, come with me, honey. We can eat together. I'm having a starvation attack. I just stood there, looking at her. Well, come on, love. You don't want me to die off of malnutrition, do you? Now, do you? Do you like Chinese food? Yes, I told her, wondering why she was taking all this interest in me, and wondering how she knew I was new at the hotel. We walked around until we came to a Chinese restaurant. The whole time she talked non-stop. Suddenly, I remembered how little money I had. I had intended to eat a hot dog or something. Look, I told her, I don't have enough money to go in there. This place looks expensive, and I'm kinda on the broke side. Maybe another time, I'll come eat with you. Listen, love, she said. I didn't drag you all this way to eat alone. I hate to eat alone, so you're just stuck with my company. It looks like I'm gonna have to treat your broke ass to dinner. I was extremely grateful. Miss Shirley, that's what she called herself, was one hell of a talker. She sounded sophisticated and country at the same time. She was from Georgia, but she had been in New York for a long time. She had lived in the village for a long time too, although she said she was, I don't think you can say that word no more. Yeah, you can't say that word. You can't say that word. She said she was, damn, I don't even know how to describe that. She was a worker of some type. I ordered something like chop suey, the cheapest thing on the menu. What is you trying to do, honey? She said. Make me sick? Look, you sit there with your ears open and let me do the ordering. She ordered all this stuff, and when it came, we feasted. There was so much we could barely finish. That's better, honey. Now mother can join the living. The waiter came and asked if we wanted anything else. If I can't have you, Miss Shirley said with a wink, I'd like the check. The waiter, a tall, thin Chinese man, blushed and hurried away. This is one bold chick, I remember thinking. How long is your place rented for, Miss Shirley? Until tomorrow. What are you going to do after that? I'll find another job, I told her. Then I told her about my job at the cafeteria. She laughed her head off. Well, honey, she asked me, what in the hell are you running from, or what in the hell are you running to? I told her a sad tale about my mother being in the hospital. Do you actually expect me to believe that mess? I swore up and down that it was true. I ain't no fool, honey. I've been out on the streets long enough to know that you're running from something. And if you don't want to tell me, that's your business. But I like you, and I'll try to help you if I can. I was grateful, and I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Look, I got this friend that works on Bleecker Street. He wants to take some time off to hang out with his friends. But he doesn't want to lose his job. You could work in his place until he comes back. Fine, I said. I was down for anything. Well, almost. We went to the cafe, and a skinny white dude came up to us. "Sit down and rest yourselves. I'll be back in a minute." We sat down a little round. We sat down at a little round table. "You want some espresso?" the guy said. "Sure," Miss Shirley said. He brought two little cups of black stuff. I took one sip and thought I was gonna choke. Miss Shirley cracked up. "Well, I can see that you're not initiated. I'm gonna have to do some things about your education." I was arranged to take the guy's job for 4 days, and he showed me what I had to do. "If you forget anything or have any questions, ask the sailor," he said, pointing to a man with tattoos up and down his arms. I was to begin work the next day. Oh no, that's not right. I was to begin work the next afternoon at 4. I still didn't know how I was going to pay my rent at the hotel. For the next few days, I still didn't know how I was going to pay my rent at the hotel for the next few days, because I wouldn't be paid for my work at the cafe until the guy came back from his vacation. I told Miss Shirley what I was thinking. "I'll talk to Freddie," she said, and see if he'll let my good friend have a little credit. If not, you can come up to my place and sleep on the floor. We went back to the hotel and found Freddie. He didn't want to give me any credit. Miss Shirley kept haggling. "How much money do you have?" she asked me. $15. "Well, give me 10 and I'll lend you the rest so you can rent a room for a week." I gave her the money, and Freddie told me I had to move to another room, which was fine with me. The room was tiny. But at least it had a bathroom, and I had somewhere to stay for the rest of the week. I was grateful as hell for Miss Shirley. "Well," she told me, "you get a good night's sleep. Mother has to go to work." "Where do you work?" "Anywhere I have to," she said. "Anywhere I can." I was dog tired, and the bed was like an oasis. I woke up the next afternoon. It was almost 1 o'clock. I took a shower, got dressed, and went to find something to eat. Then I went back to the hotel and knocked on Miss Shirley's door. She opened the door with a razor in her hand. I had almost fainted. She was shaving her face. Miss Shirley was a man. When she saw my reaction, she fell to the floor laughing. "You got a lot to learn, Sugar. You got a lot to learn." We both sat there laughing up a storm. Somehow, it was funny as hell. I went to work early that afternoon. The job wasn't bad, and I could eat all I wanted, which meant I didn't have to buy dinner. The tips weren't that much, but I'd be able to live on them until the guy came back. Any black woman, practically anywhere in America, can tell you about being approached, propositioned, and harassed by white men. Many consider all black women potential prostitutes. In the village, this phenomenon was 10 times worse than In the village, this phenomenon was 10 times worse than elsewhere. It was almost impossible to go from one corner to the next without some white man hissing at you, following you, or jingling the money in his pockets. One morning in the park, I met a couple about my age from Harlem who had run away from home and were now living in a room in the village. I told them that I too had run away, and we became instant comrades. We got into a discussion about how white men are always approaching black women. Yeah, they giggled, but we got something for their ass. Yeah, I asked. Yeah, we fixed them right up. How? I asked. Then they told me. The Murphy game was their game. They told me how it worked, and I fell out laughing. I thought it was a brilliant scheme. You want to try it? I know they dig you. I was anxious to try. I was anxious to try this new scheme because it was big money, and I would be able to pay Miss Shirley back and get a real place of my own. That first night, after my job was over, I met Pat and Ronnie in the park. Pat and I were the bait, and Ronnie was a protection. We were all to walk separately on different sides of the street so that we could see each other. I had dressed up and put on makeup to look older. About 5 minutes after we started walking, a white man came up to me. He said he liked the way I walked and wanted to take me someplace. I'm on my way to a party, I told him. It's going to be a real high party. Yeah? What kind of party is it going to be? What kind of party would you like it to be? A party for two, he said. I know a a place where they've got some pretty nice private rooms and they're not too expensive. It's a private club. You've got to join first. How much does it cost? $15 for the room, $15 to join the club, and $15 for the babysitter. You don't look old enough to have a kid. The babysitters for my little sister. We argued about the price. He thought it was too high. I kept telling him how he was getting a deal, and that once he joined, he would be a member for a year, and could go there anytime he wanted and get some action. But finally, he agreed to pay. When we got to the building, I told him to give me the money so I'd go upstairs and pay the people. By the way, I said, would you tell me what kind of work you do? These people are very particular about who joins their club. I work for a bank. I could see from his face he was lying. I'll be right back. Don't you go nowhere. I ran up the stairs and opened the door to the roof. Carefully, I closed it behind me. Then I went over about 10 roofs until I came to the one I was supposed to come down from. I tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. Somebody had locked it. I went to the next roof. Luckily, the door opened. I ran down the stairs and came out around the corner from where the man was standing. Hurriedly, I walked to where I was supposed to go meet Pat and Ronnie. How'd it go? They asked. Easy as pie, I answered. Okay, let's do another one. I was scared to try another one because I was scared I'd run into the man again. We can go up around 14th Street. We've got another building staked out around there. Okay, I told him, but let's check it out first. I explained about the door that wouldn't open. We got to the new place. I checked it out, and then went on to 14th Street. In a matter of 20 minutes, Pat and I had each caught a fish. I was worried to death we'd bump into each other. I rushed my man into the building, got the money, and hurried to the meeting place. I waited and waited. Let me see. Hold on. I waited and waited. It seemed like an eternity until they came. Pat had seen me with my man and had good sense to go to a different building than the one I took my man to. We were all in high spirits. See how easy it is? Pat asked me. Yeah, it's a breeze. We split up the money. We had each made $45. I rushed back to the hotel. Miss Shirley was there. Miss Shirley was there, and we went out to her room for a drink. I felt like a millionaire. I had the money I had made working in the cafe, plus the $45. I whipped out my bankroll and paid Miss Shirley back. Now, girl, I know you ain't got no rich uncle. How'd you get all that money? Girl, is you crazy? Do you know what one of these men will do to you if they find you in the street? Girl, these people out here in the street don't give a damn about you. These streets will eat your ass alive. Honey, I know what I'm talking about. You done run away, ain't you? Yeah, I told her. I ran away. I knew it all the time. Well, honey, I ain't gonna make you go home. If I tried, you'd only run away again. But you're wasting your time and your life out here. These people don't care nothing about you. All they want to do is suck your blood. You're a smart girl. What you need to do is go home and finish school. I'm never going home. Well, if you insist on staying out here in these streets, you better start acting like you got some sense. Don't you never let nobody use you and make a fool out of you. What if one of those men had been a crazy man and followed you upstairs? What if that other door had been locked and you hadn't been able to get out? Where was your so-called protection? You mean to tell me that you gonna risk your life for $15? Girl, this village ain't nothing to play around with. They got some crazy ass men around here that is killing young girls like you. Girl, as far as I can see, the young boy Ronnie don't want to be nothing but a pimp. He ain't done nothing to earn that money. You better start using your head. I could see Miss Shirley knew what she was talking about. But what am I going to do, Miss Shirley? You know how hard it is to find a job. Don't worry, honey. I'll come up with something. The next day, when I went down to the lobby, Freddie was behind the desk. I hear you're looking for a job, he said. Uh-huh. You know anything about being a barmaid? No, I told him. Well, you go over to this place, Tony's on 3rd Street, and ask for a guy named Chuck. Tell him I sent you. Thanks. Thanks a lot. I went over to Tony's and talked to Chuck. Do you have any openings? I asked him. Sure, we always have openings for foxes like you, he laughed. Do you know the setup? No. $15 a night. $15 a night, and you get a quarter for each drink and bot. And you get a quarter for each drink and $1 for each bottle of champagne. I looked at him blankly. Your job is to sit and look pretty and keep the customers happy and buying. You work from 8 in the evening to 4 in the morning when the place closes. What you do after that is your business. Just don't make any deals on the premises. Yes, I answered wearily. Well then, see you tonight. When I got back to the hotel, I told Miss Shirley about my new job. All right, honey, but you be real careful. There are a lot of crazy peoples around here. And you keep looking for a real job so you can go to school at night. Now, come on upstairs and let me show you how to put your face on. At 10 to 8, I was at Tony's. Chuck was there and introduced me to the barmaid. Her name was Joyce. Come here for a minute, honey, she told me, and went to the end of the bar. I followed her. You like whiskey sours? I guess so. I never had one. Whatever you do, don't get drunk. I'm gonna make your drinks without the whiskeys. If a customer comes in, come in. I know he's a suspicious type. I'll make you a real one. If you want a drink with a whiskey in it, just order it with your hands folded. There's not too much I can do about the champagne. I'll try to keep pouring it into the man's glass, but it's not too bad. The glasses are small. Okay, thanks. I went to the bar and sat down. In a few minutes, a couple of white guys came in. They sat down 2 seats from me and kept looking in my direction. Would you like a drink? One said. Okay, I answered. What are you drinking? A whiskey sour. And so began what seemed like a never-ending parade of whiskeyless whiskey sours. It got so that even the smell of this stuff made me sick. Once in a while, I would ask the barmaid to put some whiskey in one. But I had never been much of a drinker. Most of the customers were white men who were looking for some action. I found most of them to be crude, boring, and creepy. I would sit there making up stories to tell them just to keep myself amused. Another object of these stories was to get them to spend as much money as possible. If I thought the man would go for a sob story and hand over some money, I would tell him a real tearjerker. Other times, I pretended to be a college girl going to NYU. This made them less likely to be bold. When I played a college girl, I usually said I was a math major, because people never know the first thing about math. One night, after I told this guy my math major story, he asked me some questions about integrals and imaginary numbers. I didn't have the faintest idea what the guy was talking about. It turned out he taught math at NYU. I know you're lying, he told me. Of course I am. Who in the hell is going to be interested in the life of a waitress? And the guy broke out laughing. That deserves a drink, he said. Bring the lady another drink. After that, the guy, I called him Mr. Math, came by every so often to hang out. He would buy drinks and we would sit there, cracking jokes. How's your thesis going? He would ask. Fine, I'd answer. I'm doing a chronologically study about the social significance of 2 and 2 equaling 4. I had a few other regulars. Most of them came in to tell me about their troubles. They either had wife trouble or job trouble. Some were drunks who just wanted somebody to drink with. And others just like the challenge of trying to seduce a young girl. A lot of the other girls I'm gonna try to be as okay. A lot of the girls were sex workers. The few who weren't were either just out to make some extra money or they were alcoholics. Most of the women were very nice and protective of me. The sex workers liked me because I was always sending them business and was always discreet about it. Soon, I made friends with the guys in the jazz quartet that worked there regularly. I always loved jazz, and I would clap and shout and let them know I enjoyed the music. The piano player and I became especially tight. I called him my big brother, and he was very protective of me. When the place closed, he and maybe one or two of the group would walk me home. If it was raining, he would send me home in a cab. Closing time was the roughest time of all. Some of the men thought that buying drinks entitled them to more than conversation. But Chuck was a good bouncer and could spot a problem before it became serious. If a guy was getting out of hand, Chuck would approach him and tell him that I was the sister of one of the guys in the band. And if he didn't treat me with respect, he'd let him have it. At times, some real freaks and weirdos hung out there. There was one guy who had bought the panties of almost every woman who worked at Tony's, paying them each $15. I asked him what he did with them. He laughed and told me he hung them up on the walls of his apartment. When I told one of the other girls, she laughed. Girl, you believe that? That guy takes them home and holds them over his nose. He's a sniff freak. But any woman at Tony's had to be careful. Some of the men who came around were real dangerous. On nights when things were slow and there were no customers in the place, the woman would tell horror stories about all the crazy men they had run into. I was big for my age and well built, and with all the makeup I wore, I could usually pass for 19. I told everybody I could usually pass for 18. I told everybody I was 19. The white people never questioned my age, but the black people would sooner or later realize I was younger than I let on. Some of them even guessed that I had run away from home and would take me to the side and encourage me to go home. After a while, all the women who worked at the place teased me about not having a boyfriend. Okay. This girl don't like men, and she don't like women. Here's the girl that lets her fingers do the walking. When they teased me, I wanted to crawl into a crack somewhere and hide. The more embarrassed I became, the more they laughed. A new bass crusher came to work for the band, and I developed an instant crush on him. I was convinced I was in love. In a short time, everybody knew about my crush. But the bass player never paid me any mind at all. I did everything I could to attract his attention, but he just ignored me. Near closing time, his white girlfriend would come in and they would leave together. I hated her. She looked so smug. One weekday night, it was pouring rain outside and the place was empty. The bass player said to me, "I'm writing a song for you. You want to hear it?" I could have fainted. I was grinning from ear to ear. Yes, I'd like to hear it. Okay, so then it, da 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 da. Oh no, I'm not. I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say that. Oh no, there was okay. So it's a song. It's a song, and it just goes on. It's a little bit of lyrics, but it has the point of the song is it's got the word jailbait in it. It's got the word jailbait. It's calling Assata Shakur jailbait. The rest of the group chimed in, jailbait, jailbait, and the whole place cracked up. I could have died right then and there. That was the end of my crush. And when I thought about it later, though, it was funny. A lot of the black men that I met in the village were hung up on white men. Oh no. I had somebody that okay. A lot of the black men that I met in the village were hung up on white men. Or were hung up on white women. I'm sorry. Some of them would come out. Some of them would come right out and tell you, "Man, I can't dig no." Okay, I'm not gonna say. I can't dig no black woman. Give me a white woman every day. When I asked them why, they said white women were sweeter. Black women are evil. White women are more understanding. Black women are more demanding. One of the things that really infuriated me was when they called black women sapphire. You know how you black women are. Sapphire. Evil. A lot of these guys would have trampled over my fight, would have trampled over my face to get to a white woman. At times, I really got sick of being around so many grown people. I'd either sneak back into my old neighborhood or hang out with Pat and Ronnie. One night, there was going to be a party uptown. I was dying to be with kids my own age. So I told Chuck I was taking the night off. When we got to the party, it was dull and tired. So Pat and Ronnie ran off to find some reefer. They loved the stuff, but I was scared of it. I waited and waited for them to get back. I started to talk to a boy who seemed really nice about how dull the party was. He said he knew of a boss party that was going to be happening later. I waited for Pat and Ronnie to come back, but they never did. "Why don't you come to the party with me?" the boy asked. "It's at my house, and I'm sure you'll have a good time." Finally, I said I would go. He seemed so nice. He lived in some projects near Spanish Harlem. When we got to his house, no one was there. I started to leave, but he said his friends were at a ball game and they would be there afterward. In a little while, the doorbell rang, and sure enough, all these people came in. After a minute, I noticed they were all boys. "Excuse me," the boy said. Then they all went into another room for a minute. When they returned, they were whispering and talking under their breath. I can tell that they were up to something. "Where are all the girls?" I asked. "Oh, they're coming." One came and sat next to me. He put his hand on my leg. I moved it away. "Come on, baby, why do you gotta act like that?" "Come here, man," one of them said. I could sense that something was wrong. I didn't know what they were up to, but I knew they were up to something. I picked up my pocketbook and my sweater. I'll have to be going." "No, baby, you ain't going nowhere." "I've got to go." I started walking towards the door. One of them grabbed my arm and yanked me from the door. "Sit your ass down. We've got plans for you." I knew it now. They were going to rape me. I had heard people talking about trains, but I had never thought it would happen to me. I sat still for a minute. Then I made a wild break for the door. They tried to grab me, and I fought like hell. The fight didn't last too long, though, because in a minute they had me held down on the floor. They were pulling out my skirt and taking my blouse off. I cried and screamed. "Shut up," one of them said, slapping my face. I begged them for mercy. I told them I was a virgin. "There's always a first time," someone sneered. I begged and pleaded. I cried and cried. I couldn't believe they could be so heartless. But they were. The boy who brought me there was arguing with another boy who would be first. I couldn't believe it. It was a nightmare. They were arguing and carrying on as if I wasn't even human, as if I was some kind of thing. I felt so scared and betrayed. I had trusted this boy. The argument between them was heated. I hoped they would fight and kill each other. I kept begging for mercy, pleading with them. They paid me no attention. One of them came over to me as if he felt sorry for me. "Don't worry, it won't hurt. You'll see. You'll like it." Okay. I heard the boy who had brought me here say. "You can go first, man." And the other boy started toward me. I jumped up and tried to run, but I was cornered. One tried to grab me, and in the process, he knocked over the ashtray. "Be careful, man," said the boy whose house it was. "My mother will kill me if this house gets messed up." That was my cue. I picked up a vase and threw it at the wall. I picked up a lamp and something else, crying and screaming at the same time. You might get me, but I'm gonna mess up your mother's house before I do. The boy who was supposed to go first made a leap for me and missed. I kicked over the table and knocked over a plant that was on the stand. Get back! Get back! I screamed. The boy whose house it was grabbed the boy who was supposed to go first. Come on, man, my mother will kill me. Get back! Get back! I screamed. I'm gonna throw this lamp straight into that mirror. There was a big mirror hanging behind the couch. Get them out of here. Get them out of here, or I'll fuck this house up. I was shaking and crying, but I was serious as hell. I was gonna mess that boy's house up so bad that no one would recognize it. Get them out of here, I said, kicking over the table. Come on, the boy said. Y'all gotta get out of here. My mother's gonna have a fit. You're crazy, one of them said to me. Come on, let's jump on her, man. She can't do that much damage. It's the man's house, one of the others said. Come on, let's go. Get him out of here, I screeched at the top of my lungs. That's okay, one of them said. We'll wait for you outside. Slowly, and what seemed forever, they left. Only the boy who had brought me remained. I could see that he was trying to figure out some way to jump me. Don't come near me. You better stay back. I didn't know what I was going to do next. They were all waiting for me outside. I couldn't call the police because the police were looking for me. Get back, I told the boy, who looked like he was trying to... Get back, I told the boy. Who looked like he was trying to ease up close to me. All right, get away from the door. I still had the lamp and something else in my hand. Get back, I told him, indicating the back of the apartment, or I'll smash the house up. When he moved back, I looked through the people. There was nobody in the hallway. They must be waiting downstairs, I thought. All right, I yelled. Get over by the door. He moved to the door. I'll get out of the hallway and knock on one of your neighbor's door or bring a grown-up back here. What? You heard me. Now move. It wasn't my idea. I didn't want to do it. I had to. I don't want to hear that shit. Get your ass up in that hall, or I'll mess your house up so bad your mother won't even think it's her house. Please, the boy said. Please my ass, I screamed. If you don't get out there and knock on one of those doors, you can forget about your mother's house. He went outside into the hallway. I slammed the door after him. I watched other people as he knocked on the door. A lady answered, and I opened the door. I started begging her to help me. Please, miss, help me. They're trying to get me. I screamed, crying all over again. I still had the lamp in my hand. Please walk me downstairs to the subway or to a cab. What happened, honey? She asked. They tried to do it to me, I cried. The woman looked at me and then at the boy. You wait there for a minute, honey. Then she and her husband came out. Don't worry, nothing's gonna happen to you now. They brought me downstairs and put me into a cab. I thought a lot about those boys after that night. I hated them. But what I couldn't understand is why they hated me so much. Everybody was saying what a dog eat. Everybody was saying what a dog eat dog world it was. There were all kinds of people in the world, and most of them seemed unhappy. Nobody seemed to be in their own bag. Nobody seemed to be in their own bag, and few seemed to care about anybody else. I had read this play by Sartre. Sartre. I don't know. The play ended up with the conclusion that hell is that the play ended with the conclusion that hell is other people, and for a while, I agreed. Back then, when I was growing up, boys gangbanging or gang raping a girl was a pretty common thing. They called it pulling a train. It didn't happen to any kind of particular girl. It happened to girls who were at the wrong place at the wrong time. The boys talked about it like it was a joke or a game, like they were only out to have some fun. If a girl was caught on the wrong side of a park, or in the wrong territory, or in the wrong street, she was a target. It was a common thing. It was a common thing back then for the boys to downgrade. It was a common thing. I'm sorry, I lost my spot for a second. Okay. It was a common thing for boys to downgrade girls and cuss at them in the street. It was common for them to go to bed with girls and talk about them like dogs the next day. It was common for boys to deny that they were fathers of their babies. And it was common for boys to beat up girls and knock them around. And then the girls will get hard too. If he ain't got no money, I don't want to be bothered. If he don't got no car, then later for him. The more I watched how boys and girls behaved. The more I watched how boys and girls behaved, the more I read, and the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that this behavior could be traced directly back to the plantation when slaves were encouraged to take the misery of their lives. When slaves were encouraged to take the misery of their lives out on each other instead of on their master. The slave masters taught us we were ugly, less than human, unintelligent, and many of us believed it. Black people became breeding grounds, studs, and black people became breeding. Damn. A black woman was fair game for anyone at any time. The master, or a visiting guest, or any redneck who desired her. The slave master would order her to have sex. The slave master would order her to have sex with his stud, 7 with that stud, for the purpose of increasing his stock. She was considered less than a woman. She was a cross between a whore and a workhorse. Black men internalized the white man's opinion of black women. And, if you ask me, a lot of us still act like we're back on the plantation with the master pulling the string. After my close call uptown, I became more skeptical of everybody. I would I was much more careful about the situations I let myself fall into. I would talk to the man at Tony's. More I would talk to the man at Tony's, but more and more it became strictly business. The more I saw of street life, the uglier it was. One day, as one day as I was walking, one second. One day I was walking down 8th Street. I saw one of my aunt's friends. Her name was Abby or Addie or something like that, and she was as big as a truck. I turned my head, hoping she wouldn't recognize me. Joey, Joey, I heard her cry out. I kept walking. She kept calling. I kept walking. Then I felt her grab my arm. I know you, she said. You're Joey. Your aunt and your mother are worried to death about you. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. My name is Joyce, and I don't know you or anybody else that you're talking about. Come off it, Joey, she said. You're not fooling me. Come with me while I call your aunt. She had my arm in an iron grip. I thought of making a run for it, but she was too big to play with. She took me to some bar and told me to sit down at the counter while she made the call. As soon as she started dialing, I made a beeline for the door. She was right on top of me, grabbing me with that iron grip. You're not going anywhere until your aunt gets down here. In half an hour, Evelyn was on scene, throwing questions at me, left and right. Where have you been? What have you been doing? Where have you been staying? What have you been doing for money? What have you been eating? She asked me a million questions more. When Evelyn questioned me, she sounded like a lawyer cross-examining a witness. In about an hour, I had broken down and told her everything. She demanded I take her to the hotel where I was staying. After I packed my things, she told the guy behind the counter, "Do you know that you've had a 13-year-old girl staying here? I could have you prosecuted for contributing to the delinquency of a minor." And the guy looked at me and he couldn't believe it. I could have crawled under the floor. Then she called up Tony's and told him the same thing. I was dying of embarrassment. But in a way, I was glad it was over. I was getting tired of the streets. I was tired of being grown, and I wanted to be a kid again. This is chapter 7 of chapter 7 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. This is out of any of out of all the books that we have read, I'd say this one is without a doubt probably the toughest. It's just the toughest read, and I've only read a chapter. So far. Okay. quick little announcements. Gonna have breakfast at 9 a.m. today, a free breakfast at 9 a.m. today, along with Hello, how you doing today? Good. Have a good rest of your day. We're gonna be having a free breakfast today at 9 a.m. to about noon, and that's gonna continue every weekend, at least until the end of this month. Free breakfast every weekend and pizza Friday nights. Also, we're going to be having group discussions at around 5 p.m. every day. Right down here. So, breakfast every weekend and group discussions at 5 p.m. And if anybody wants to come down and read, just come down and the seat's anybody's anytime you want it. Okay, we're going to get started. This is chapter 7 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. Not quite sure how to say the name. I'm going to go just Kama. I'm going to go Kama. Kama and I were acquainted. Kama and I were acquitted, Kama and I acquitted in the bank robbery trial in the Southern District of New York on January 28th, 1973. And on the following day, I was returned to New Jersey. When I arrived at the Morristown jail, there was a clump of reporters and photographers standing around. Morristown looked like a small town USA. Morristown looked just like small town USA. The jail was an ugly building attached to the courthouse. The jail was an ugly building attached to the courthouse. There were a few other women in the jail, and I was kept away from them. The only time I saw them was when I was being taken to or from my cell. They all appeared to be white. Although I found out later that one was black. The guards were all women. As old as the hills, and they had been working in the jail for an eternity. There was a television and a radio in the cell. It had been so long since I had been... There was a television in the cell. There was a television and a radio in the cell. It had been so long since I'd been able to watch news or television or listen to static-free radio. That I went crazy. I had turned into a crochet friend. My poor mother was the unfortunate recipient of my early creations. Brave, devoted person that she was, she thought that they were pure genius. We learned there were few, if any, black jurors on the panel for the new trial. The news was depressing. The panel was selected from voting rolls, and since candidates running for office seldom represent that interest of black and poor people, black and poor people rarely don't vote. But failing to vote means they don't sit on juries. Any chance that we would receive something even remotely resembling a fair trial was slim. We decided to try to have the trial removed to a federal court. The chances of the feds taking over were slim, but it was worth a try. The trial was being held in the federal court in Newark. At least we'd be assured of a few more black jurors on the jury panel. There was countless joint legal There were countless joint legal meetings, countless strategy sessions, and countless court appearances. My first look at Morris County juror panel flung me into a terrible depression. There were only 2 or 3 black jurors on each panel, and they looked like extras in a soap opera. As a matter of fact, the whole jury panel looked like escapees from a soap opera. They dressed differently and had different air about them than New York people. Morristown was supposed to be one of the 10 richest counties in the country. And looking at these people, I believed it. Look at these people, I believed it. I could just see trying to explain to them what poor black people in big cities go through. How could they understand someone being a black revolutionary? They had so little to revolt against. They had bought the American dream, lock, stock, and barrel, and seemed unaware that for the majority of black and third world people, the American dream is the American nightmare. Evelyn and I had resolved our differences, and she was back on the case. She, Ray Brown, and Charles McKinney, Sundiata's lawyer, worked hard on the motion to remove the trial to federal court. But after a hearing, the federal judge remanded the case back to state court. He hadn't even listened to our arguments. So we were right back where we had started, picking a jury in Morris County. Jury selection droned on tediously. Sundiata and I kept ourselves from falling asleep and from having nervous breakdowns by talking and laughing. But seeing Sundiata every day was such a comfort to me. We made up all kinds of little games and jokes, especially guessing the answers jurors would give to the trial judge's questions. We got to be pretty good at it. We could look at a person pretty much know what he was going to say. Some would glare at us hatefully while they waited to be called, as if they couldn't wait to give their opinions that we were guilty. They were so sure of exactly what happened. They recited detail after detail after detail from newspapers and TV. Where were you hiding on the turnpike? I wanted to scream at them. I didn't see you. Others gave us crooked smiles in the hopes that we would think they sympathized with us and leave them on the jury. But there was not one bigot in the courtroom. None of us said they had prejudice against black people. Do you have any black friends? The judge asked. Of course. But when asked if they had ever invited a black person to their homes or been to the home of a black person, the answer was invariably no. On one panel, the judge asked everybody. On one panel, okay. No. On one panel, the judge asked everyone if they had called a black person the N-word. They all said no, except for one woman. Well, when I was a child, after that, a whole bunch of them said the same thing. Sometimes the answers were as phony as they were a joke. Were so phony they were a joke. Except the joke was on us. One day, a man being questioned told the judge that he had heard about the case in newspapers and what he had heard on radio and TV. He tried to make it seem like he had just incidentally came across the news stories and that he had not really followed the case or paid much attention to it. Further, he denied having been affected by any of it. Have you ever read a book called Target Blue? Only a day or two before, the defense team had asked that questions be included in the boudoir. Robert Daly, who at one time was a public relations and publicity director at the New York City Police Department, had written the book Target Blue. An excerpt from the book was coincidentally printed in New York Magazine on almost the exact day our trial was to begin. One or two chapters were about the Black Liberation Army. The book was a collection of sensationalism, groundless accusations, and outright lies. The few facts that were in the two chapters were distorted beyond recognition. I was referred to by name. Daly implied that I had been responsible for the deaths of numerous policemen. He kept calling me the soul of the Black Liberation Army, the mother hen that kept fighting and kept them moving. According to the book, I had also robbed numerous banks and blown up a police car with a hand grenade during a police chase. Have you ever read Target Blue? The judge asked. Yes. Immediately, the defense submitted requests to the judge that additional questions be asked. When did you read the book? As a matter of fact, I'm reading it now. Not only had he been reading the book, but he had it upstairs in the jury room. Although the defense asked for an investigation, the judge refused. It was obvious the man who had brought the book to court to show other jurors, and they had discussed it. A lot of arguments made by our lawyers, the judge seemed to agree that after a lot of arguments made by our lawyers, the judge agreed to dismiss that juror and others in the panel with whom he had been close to. One day, I was informed that the Nazi Party was demonstrating outside the court, marching up and down, complete with swastikas, brown uniforms, and helmets. They carried white power, save our police, and death penalty placards. Placards. Other signs were printed with racist statements. Rumors spread that a cross had been burned in front of one of the homes of our supporters. At the end of the day, the Nazis almost got into a fight. With some of the few black residents in Morristown. A lot of people didn't know it, but they got more Nazis than Ku Klux Klan in Jersey than a little bit. Some of my friends call it up south. How we doing? I'm sorry, I can't read no type of comments right now. I don't got my... Is that... Oh no, wait, hold on. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Oh, good morning, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing this. Good morning. Good morning, Ricky, how you doing? Okay, we're gonna get back started. We're reading, Good morning, good morning. It's a beautiful day out. It was real nice. It's real nice out. Okay, a lot of where were we? Some of my friends call it up south. Lou Myers, who was later one of my lawyers on this case, is from Mississippi. One day, in all earnest, he told me he would rather try a case in Mississippi any day than try one in Jersey. I couldn't understand it. I was growing weaker and weaker. My energy seemed to be gone down the drain. All I wanted to do was sleep. I chided myself for trying to escape from reality instead of facing it. I had seen women in jail sleep their whole time away. I was afraid that was happening to me. I was so easily upset and reacted to everything in an exaggerated manner. My nerves were terrible. Every little thing affected me. All I did all day when there was no court was sleep, eat, and watch television, and listen to the radio. I was eating food like it was going out of style. This also convinced me my nerves was going bad. I have seen people in prison gain 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds, eating out their nerves and boredom. It gets to the point when all you have to look forward to is the meals, and that in and of itself is pitiful, because anyone who has ever been in prison knows how terrible the food is. Yet I was gulping that stuff down just like it was mom's home cooking. I would say I've never been to prison, but in the times where I have had to stay the night in jail and have had to eat the meals that I've some of the food it's unidentifiable. I was the first time I got arrested during City Market and I had been charged with a felony and I had to stay the night. I was unsure what that breakfast was the next morning. I really, to this day, looking back on it, I still have no type of idea what that was. That just goes to talk about how terrible the conditions in jail here is, and how conditions in jail are across the country, across the world, really. Nothing is good. Nothing is good. Not the beds, not the blanket, not the scratchy ass, little ass blanket that they give you, and the tiny things of soap or the tiny little toothbrush. And there's not one good part of it. The whole thing is terrible. Inhumane. It wasn't until I sat down one day to do my exercises that I really suspected what could be wrong. I could barely get through 10 sit-ups. Everything added up. I didn't dare hope, but at the same time, deep down inside, I knew. As sure as I knew my own name, I knew that I was pregnant. But what was I to do next? I knew I had to see the doctor, but what in the world was I really gonna say? I had been in prison for 8 months, and it would be really weird to say, "Hey, I think I'm pregnant." I wanted to know for sure whether I was or not. But if I wasn't, I didn't want the doctors to know my business. Because if I was, it would only be a matter of time before the whole world knew. First thing the next morning, I saw the prison doctor. I told him all my symptoms, dropped in hint after hint. He told me there was nothing to worry about, that I was probably just constipated. As time wore on, it became harder and harder to wake up in the morning. When the guards came to wake me up for court, I would simply roll over and continue sleeping. They did everything to get me out the bed. They called, they threatened, they banged on the bars, and anything else they could think of. Just don't come in this cell, I would tell them, feeling evil as the day is long. You come in here and you put your hands on me, and I'm gonna take your head right off your shoulders. They must have known I meant it, because they kept their distance until I was awake. I didn't care what they thought or said, as long as they didn't put their hands on me. I wanted them to leave me alone. All I wanted to do was sleep. I walked into court whenever I got up, no matter what time it was. The judge would go on and on about my lateness and admonish my lawyer for not having me in court on time. But it was hopeless. I didn't care what the judge said, what the guard said, or what anybody said. All I wanted to do was sleep. I told Sundiata and one or two of my lawyers that I thought I was pregnant. They looked at me blankly, puzzled, as if I had an overactive imagination. Each day, I felt more and more weird. I felt fragile and sick. I went back to the prison doctor, dropping more and more hints. I repeated my symptoms. Queasy stomach getting bigger, sick in the morning, sleep all the time, etc. But he still didn't get the message. Kept telling me about an intestinal disorder. I didn't know what to do next. One day I woke up and could hardly move. I was sick as a dog and dizzy to boot. I got up for a minute and then sank back down on the cot, holding on to it for dear life. They called the prison doctor. I repeated the symptoms again, and this time he ordered some tests. He asked for a urine sample. I was sure he had sent for a pregnancy test. I waited a few days and heard nothing. Then the nurse came and asked me for more urine. I was certain this meant the pregnancy test was positive, and they were just retesting to be sure. Hold on, let me make sure everything good. 1 second. Okay. Let's see, where were we? Oh no. Okay. Then the nurse came and asked me for more urine. I was certain this meant the pregnancy test was positive, and they were retesting just to be sure. I gave her the urine sample and waited. When the doctor called me into his office, I knew he was going to tell me I was pregnant. Instead, he was smug and acted really on the stupid side. He kept making snide little remarks, and I could tell he was trying to make fun of me. I asked him what was wrong with me, and he repeated the same old stuff about a bowel disorder. Then he asked me some questions about my sex life. Ask your mama about her sex life, I said, and went out his office, slamming the door. Later that day, Ray Brown and Evelyn came to see me. Ray was in a jovial mood, laughing his head off. Well, you've really done it this time. I don't know what we're gonna do with you. His honor is going to give you a strong reprimand for getting pregnant during his trial. You really mean I'm really pregnant? It was in the doctor's report to the judge, didn't you know? No, I told him. I was just in that slimy bastard's office this morning, and he told me it was something wrong with my intestines. He's pulling my leg, Ray. He's pulling your leg, Ray said. They did 2 or 3 pregnancy tests on you, and they all came back positive. You're pregnant, all right. I can't believe it. Evelyn was in a state of shock. It's something, she said. Then she looked into space for a long time. It's something. Judge Bachman's having a fit, Ray said. I heard the FBI is going to conduct an investigation to determine how you got pregnant. Well, they better not trying to come around asking me no questions, I told them. I'll tell them that this baby was sent by the black creator to liberate black people. I'll tell them that this baby is the new black messiah, conceived in a holy way, come to lead our nation, come to lead our people to freedom and justice, and to create a new black nation. Sundiata and McKinney had joined us. Sundiata was elated. He couldn't get over it. He sat there grinning and slapping his knee. I think it's beautiful, he kept saying. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Everyone was in a jubilant mood. I was glad. I hadn't known how they would react. It's amazing, Evelyn said. Out of all this misery, a new life is conceived. I was caught up in this mood, but I couldn't wait to get alone. I couldn't wait to get off alone in my cell to think about this. What seemed like a remote dream was coming true. A baby. My mind was jumping and dancing. I spent the next few days in a virtual daze, a joyous daze. A person was inside me. Someone who was going to grow up to walk, talk, to laugh and love was inside me. To me, it was a miracle of all miracles, and deeply spiritual. The odds against this baby being conceived were so great, it boggled my mind. And yet it was happening. It seemed so right, so beautiful, in surroundings that were so ugly. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I was filled with emotion. Although I was deeply in love with this child, already I talked to it and worried about it and wondered how it was feeling and what it was thinking. I would lie in my cell wondering about his or her life, wondering what kind of life it would have, what kind of people it would love, what kind of values it would have, and what it would think of all this madness that would surround it. Sometimes I felt so helpless. Sometimes I felt so helplessly protective, wondering when my baby would be called the N-word for the first time. Wondering when the full horror and degradation of being black in America would descend on my baby. How many wolves hid behind the bushes to eat my child? But there were so many happy things that I thought about too. I wondered when the first time my child would sit down and seriously appreciate the glory of a sunset and marvel at the wonders of nature, or when he or she would smack lips and lick fingers over a sweet potato pie, or kiss strawberries and drink lemonade. It always intrigued me how the world can be so beautiful and so ugly at the same time. I wanted, with all my being, for my baby to experience the many types and sides of love and friendship, and to know the understanding and know and understand selflessness and generosity, struggle and sacrifice, honesty, courage, and so many of the sentiments that have given me strength, that have made my life worth living. In these days, I was in a state of in these days, I was in such a state of sensitivity, and thought that I barely noticed what was going around with me. The next time my mother came to see me, my sister was with her. I was so happy to see them both. When I say see, it is something of an overstatement, because in Morristown, there are little windows that you and your visit. Because in Morristown jail, there are something. I'm sorry, I'm messing up. Okay, we're gonna get back on track. When I say see, it is something of an overstatement, because in Morristown jail, there are little windows that you and your visitors peek through, and there are little holes through which you are supposed to talk. But to make yourself heard, you are obliged to shout. "Honey, you look pale," my mother shouted. "Mommy, I'm pregnant." "What is it, honey?" "I'm pregnant, Mommy." My mother smiled blandly. I repeated myself, and she began to laugh. "How many months are you?" "No, seriously, Mommy, I'm pregnant." "Well, so am I," my mother said, this time laughing heartily. "I think it was my hysterectomy that caused it." "No, Mommy," I pleaded. "You don't understand. I'm pregnant. I'm not joking." "Who's joking, honey?" "Pregnancy is a serious matter," she said, trying to keep a straight face. "Especially when the baby is born under immaculate conception, and God is the father." She and my sister were having a giggling fit. "What are you going to name the baby?" my sister added. "Jesus?" They just carried on. The more I insisted I was pregnant, the more they laughed and cracked jokes. But finally, my mother stopped laughing. "Are you really pregnant?" I told her that it happened in the court, and that I really don't know how to say this name. I'm gonna Google it. I told her who the father was. "How do you feel?" "Actually, kind of funny," I told her. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. This is Kamal. Okay, this is Kamal. Okay, so I'm gonna just say Kamal. I told her that it happened in court and that Kamal was the father. "How do you feel?" "Actually kind of funny," I told her. "I can barely move, and I'm just so tired." In the visiting room on the prisoner's side, there was no chairs, so you had to stand and talk. I was so tired, I couldn't stand any longer. I sat down on the floor, leaning on the wall behind me so that they could see me. I couldn't see them, but we shouted to each other until the visit was over. I went up to my cell after the visit ended, and immediately fell out. My mother went to the warden to complain about the refusal to provide chairs. The next day, Evelyn came to see me. "Your mother called me last night all the way from Morristown as soon as she left you. She was worried to death with all you've been through. You'd finally been driven in a crazy state. I told her not to worry, that you are in fact pregnant, and that I think she's in a state of shock. So's your sister. It's all over the papers. I bought them for you." I couldn't believe it. Sure enough, there were the articles. The one out in the one in the New York Daily News, I remember, was especially sordid. All the papers speculated about who the father was and how I managed to get pregnant in jail. One of them hinted that a prison guard was a father. I'm sick, Auntie. I feel awful. Well, that's what happens when you're pregnant. You get morning sickness and all sorts of other strange ailments. It's only normal. Maybe you're right, but I'm having these pains down here, I told her, pointing to where the pains were. I can barely stand up. She told me to go see the doctor, and I told her how the doctor acted. Well, go see him anyways, and have him examine you thoroughly. Meanwhile, I'll try to get seen by a private gynecologist as soon as possible. I'll probably have to go to court. She promised that she would do all she could to get an outside doctor, and I went upstairs to see the jail doctor. Why did you lie to me and tell me that it was junk about a... Why did you lie to me and tell me all that junk about a bowel disorder? Was the first thing I asked him. Well, you lied. I just figured I'd get back at you. Anyway, you found out, like I knew you would. I told him about my pains, and he... hold on, man. This is a doctor talking like this? There's no good part of jail. The doctors. The nurses. No good part in jail. Well, you lied. I just figured I'd get back at you. Anyway, you found out like I knew you would. I told him about my pains, and he examined me. What's wrong? I asked anxiously. What's wrong? I asked anxiously. There's a chance you're threatening to abort. What? I practically screamed. There's a chance you're going to abort. I don't want no abortion, I cried out. It's probably the best course you could take now. And I'd probably recommend it. And I'd recommend it. But that's not what I was talking about. I said there was a chance you could spontaneously abort, having a miscarriage. Oh no, I moaned. What are you gonna do? Relax. It's probably nothing serious. There's probably nothing much to worry about. What do you mean, nothing much to worry about? I want the baby. Well, I can't force you to do anything, but my advice is to have an abortion. It will be better for you and for everyone else. I don't want nobody's abortion. Well, what are you going to do about this miscarriage thing? Isn't there something you can give me to keep me from having a miscarriage? Isn't there something I can take to make sure I don't lose this baby? No. There's nothing I can do now. We have to wait and see what happens. What do you mean, wait and see what happens? If I have a miscarriage, then it'll be too late. Can't you call a gynecologist? No, there's nothing I can do right now. You mean there's nothing you will do right now, don't you? Take it any way you want. Won't you at least call the gynecologist in to see me? You're not a specialist in this area. I don't need you to tell me what my specialties are, he said angrily. It would be best for everybody concerned if you had an abortion, no matter which way you have it. Just who is everybody concerned? Don't you worry about it. My advice to you is that you should go to your cell and lie down. My advice to you is that you should go to your cell and lie down. Just lie down and rest your mind. Just lie down and stay off your feet. And if you go to the bathroom and see a lump in the toilet, Don't flush it. It's your baby. I raced out of his office, and when I got to my cell, I lay on the cot, crying. I was worried to death. As far as I could see, they were out to kill my baby. I couldn't lose this baby now. Not now. It was meant to be. This baby was our hope for the future. I tried to calm myself. I didn't want the baby to feel anguish. Finally, I fell asleep. The next morning, I waited anxiously for Evelyn and Ray Brown. Bray came first. I told them what had happened. Please, I begged them, get a doctor we trust to see me today. I'll try to get one as soon as I can, Ray assured me. I'll have to make some phone calls, and then I'll got to talk to the judge. He's having a fit, you know. He wants to resume trial today. Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. Ray and Evelyn came back in about an hour. Don't worry, they told me. The trial has been postponed until there is a report from your doctor. The judge has permitted you to be examined by your own gynecologist. And he's coming this afternoon, so cheer up. They did their best to take my mind off everything to make me feel better. That day, I felt worse than ever before. Is the doctor black? No, he's a Ku Klux Klan doctor, Ray joked. I felt like my insides were going to drop out on the floor any day. Ray went outside to meet the doctor and came back, followed by a tall, brown-skinned man. The man sure as hell didn't look like no doctor. He looked like Mr. Superfly himself. He had on a long fur coat, a jumpsuit, and platform shoes. But when I looked into his face, I was reassured. He was very kind and very self-assured. He was gentle when he examined me, and I was truly grateful. He asked a whole lot of questions in a careful, painstaking manner. I was really impressed. Would you tell me your name again? I asked, ashamed that I had forgotten it. Sure, that's an easy order. Ernest Wyman Garrett. What in the world? Cars are really crazy out here. Cars are really crazy. Ernest Wyman Garrett. He practiced in New York, and there was an air of New York. What the hell? I'm sorry, cars are out here just blatantly running red lights that have been red. No. Cars are crazy. I'll just say cars are crazy. He practiced in New York, and there was the air of Newark about him. I liked him instantly. He was one of those rare breeds of black professionals who hadn't lost contact with the masses of black people. He didn't have one trace of the affected bourgeois speech and mannerisms that are so popular among the black middle class. I waited nervously for the verdict. There's no doubt about it. You're pregnant. But I found blood in the vaginal canal, which can be a sign that something is wrong. There's a possibility that you are threatening to abort. This doesn't mean you can have a miscarriage. the chances are good you won't. The odds and medical statistics are in your favor. He explained the different possibilities and treatment he was prescribing. I asked a million questions, and when he left, I felt a whole lot better. I just knowing there was someone I can trust taking care of me and my baby. The days that followed are blurry in my mind. Most of the time I slept. The warden and the sheriff and the powers that were didn't like the idea of me having my own doctor. Well, in their minds, the butcher, the jailhouse crack house doctor was good enough for me. And the fact that Dr. Garrett was black infuriated them. They refused to let me hold on, let me see, where was I? And the fact that Dr. Garrett was black infuriated them. They refused to let him examine me unless a white doctor, hired by the state, was present. And for the report to the judge, the white doctor had to examine me. Fortunately, he agreed with my doctor's findings. There was a lot of activity going on around me that I didn't understand. I was too out of it to try. I could see, though, that Evelyn and Ray were worried. I wanted to help them to get to the bottom of what was happening, but I just didn't have the energy. About 2 days after my first visit, Dr. Garrett came to visit me. When he finished examining me, he said, Assata, I don't want you to worry, but I think you should be hospitalized. It's nothing serious, strictly a precautionary measure. You're in no condition to proceed with trial. You need a few weeks of complete bed rest. There's a possibility the judge will try to push you into that trial right away, without regard for your medical condition. Assata, there is no way we are going to let that happen. I am prepared to fight all the way for your right as a human being to receive decent medical care and for your baby to be born healthy. I'm doing the same for you as I would for any other patient. You should be hospitalized. There isn't a responsible doctor in the world who wouldn't agree with that opinion. And I'm prepared to testify in any court that to deny you proper medical care would be tantamount to committing murder. I will be going in a very short time to give a medical report about your condition to the judge. I will do my best to convince him of the seriousness of this matter. I think he'll listen to reason. I'm sure the judge will go along with the findings of 2 board-certified gynecologists. But if worse comes to worse, and the judge denies our motion, I will see to it personally that this jail and the courtroom are surrounded by the right to life people by tomorrow morning. I was too shot out to say much more than thank you. I was scared to death for my baby. But I knew that everything that could be done was being done, and that was taking a load off my mind. I got dressed and waited for them. To come and take me to court. I wanted to hear what was going on. When they didn't come for me, I became worried. What was going on? Why weren't they bringing me to court? Why were they taking so long? What were they going to do? Were they planning to make me go to trial like this? What were they planning to do? Evelyn and Ray came in strutting and beaming. I knew everything was going to be all right. What happened? Why didn't they bring me to court? You're too sick to go to court, Evelyn laughed. Haven't you heard that they don't let pregnant women to court? They figure it's a disease and are afraid everybody will catch it. We felt it was much better for you not to be moved. It went fine. They'll be taken to a hospital as soon as they can make their arrangements. Dr. Garrett did a great job. After that speech, there was no way the judge was going to force you to go to trial in your condition. The trial has been severed, and Sundiata will go on with the trial alone. What? I exclaimed. We had agreed that we would be tried together. Why can't they wait until I'm better? Now, Assata, you know they're going to wait for you to have your baby to try Sundiata. They claim that being here in Morristown is costing them a fortune. It will be cheaper to try us together. Well, can I at least see Sundiata and say goodbye to him? We'll try, but we doubt if there'll be time or if the sheriff will consent to it. I'm going to miss Sundiata. I'm going to miss Sundiata. Yes, we know. Later they put me on a stretcher and wheeled me into an ambulance. Don't worry, I told the baby. You're going to be alright. And here's, I don't know, this little poem of some type. I've never seen it. Maybe it's a song, I don't know what this is. I've never seen this before. Love is contraband in hell, 'cause love is an acid that eats away bars. But you, me, and tomorrow hold hands and make vows that struggle will multiply. The hacksaw has 2 blades. The shotgun has 2 barrels. We are pregnant with freedom. We are a conspiracy. This is chapter 8 of, we're about to get started on chapter 8 of the autobiography of Assata Shakur. How many pages are this? Still got a good while to go. We're about halfway through the book, chapter 8. It is, it is 8. It's 8:02. Quick little announcements as we do. Free breakfast every day. Not every day. Free breakfast every weekend. Starting at 9 a.m. every weekend, at least until the end of this month. Free breakfast every weekend, Saturday and Sundays from 9 a.m. to around noon, and along with group discussions, and those are daily, discussing the occupation as well as the book of the day. And like I said, today we are reading the autobiography of Assata Shakur. This is chapter 8. After the village, I lived with Evelyn on 80th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus in Manhattan. She had a garden apartment in Columbus and I messed up. She had a garden apartment in a brownstone. Nothing grew in the garden but weeds, and it was where our neighbors threw out their garbage. The apartment was one big room that we used for sleeping, eating, and living. It had a kitchen and a bathroom with an old-fashioned toilet set up on a platform and an overhead tank that you had to pull a little chain on to flush. Evelyn always referred to it as a dump. She had fixed it up nicely, but it was just too small for two people, especially if one of them was me. I I was a slob, and Evelyn went to great pains to train me into neatness. In a small place like that, when just a few things are out of place, it looks like a hurricane passed through. And many times, after long days of work, poor Evelyn would be greeted with a hurricane. After many times after long days of work, poor Evelyn would be greeted with a hurricane, a tornado, and an earthquake at the same time. Gradually, I learned to keep things in something vaguely resembling order. The neighborhood, for me, was exciting, full of character and different flavors. Central Park and Riverside Park were nearby. Excuse me. And I immediately fell in love with both of them. Then also there were plenty of museums nearby. I spent hour upon hour in the Museum of Natural History and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were free then, and full of fascinating things. There were all kinds of stores for me to explore and examine, even though most of the time I didn't have any money. I was delighted with it all, and it was my first clear glimpse of the hierarchy of American society. 80th Street, like many of the other nearby streets, was changing. Most of the changing, however, had taken place before I got there. Most of the Germans had moved out, and black and Puerto Rican people were moving in. Evelyn told me that when she had moved there, it was so safe she had slept in the summer with the back door open and the screen door latched. On 80th Street, there might be 3, 4, or 5 people huddled into a one-room apartment. Sometimes the apartment were rented furnished with nothing but an old saggy bed, a chest of drawers, and a beat-up refrigerator and stove. You could usually tell them from the outside by the paper-thin plastic curtains shimmying in the wind. Most of the people on 80th Street were poor, although here and there were a few renovated apartments that catered to a clientele that was a little richer, usually night people. 79th Street was directly behind us, but there was a world of difference between the two. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. Listen to this. Okay. 79th Street was directly behind us, but there was a world of difference between the two. It was upper middle class street. Doctors and lawyers and a lot of performers lived there. Every day after school, I would hear an opera singer practicing. Maybe that's why I developed a profound dislike for the opera. The people on 79th Street wouldn't dream of socializing with the people from 80th Street. They recognized our existence with a mixture of amusement, fear, and dislike. 81st Street, between Central Park West and Columbus Avenue, was even richer. The lobbies were elegant, and the doormen were splendidly attired. They were, for the most part, all white, not even slightly aware of the people that lived only a block away. Farther over toward the middle, toward I'm sorry, farther over toward the river, near the West End Avenue or Riverside Drive, there was a middle-class neighborhood. How do I sound? Do I sound all right? I feel like I sound louder now. Okay. Let's see. Farther over toward the river, near West End Avenue or Riverside Drive, there was a middle-class neighborhood. The buildings were usually old, grandiose, and well-kept. The people who lived there were mostly white. Of course, with a few black people and mixed couples thrown in. Hold on. Oh, no. Oh, no. Donations. I didn't have time to get my shoes on. Just had to run out there. Alright. Man, I don't remember where we were now. Oh. Okay. Sorry, that discombobulated thing. That water was empty. Okay. Okay, I can pick that up in a second. Okay, where were we? Okay. The Upper West Side, as the neighborhood was called, was supposed to be a liberal stronghold. I have never really understood exactly what a liberal is, though, since I have heard liberals express every conceivable opinion on every conceivable subject. As far as I can tell, you have the extreme right, who are fascists, racist, capitalistic dogs like Ronald Reagan, who come right out and let you know where they're coming from. And at the opposite end, you have the left, who are supposed to be committed to justice, equality, and human rights. And somewhere between those 2 points is the liberal. As far as I'm concerned, the liberal is the most meaningless word in the dictionary. History has shown me that as long as some white middle class people can live high on the hog, take vacations to Europe, send their children to private schools, and reap the benefits of their white skin privilege, then they're liberals. But when times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask, and you think they're But when times get hard and money gets tight, they pull off that liberal mask, and you think you're talking to Adolf Hitler. You feel sorry for the so-called underprivileged, just as long as they can maintain their own. They feel sorry for their so-called underprivileged, just as long as they can maintain their own privileges. Sometimes I walked over to the east side, on the other side of Central Park. If Riverside Drive was like another city, then the east side was like another world. English nannies. English nannies pushed fancy baby carriages, they call them trams, through the eastern side of Central Park. The only black people you saw were servants, or like me, those just passing through. Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, chauffeur-driven cars, diamonds, and furs. The Upper East Side was for the Upper East Side was for the rich. When I walked through those streets, some looked at me as if I was the object from a museum or something. Once or twice, a doorman actually stopped and asked me where I was going, but I kept walking and looking. Sometimes I'd have some fun and walk into one of the stores. I couldn't believe there were people who paid that kind of money for things. As soon as I stepped in, the salespeople were right on me. Sometimes I said I was just looking. Other times I would say Other times I would ask for outrageous things like pickled feet. Usually they would say, "What? What? What?" And I would burst out laughing. One time I went to a grocery store and asked who my mistress was. I was crazy about art, and I made it a point to visit any art gallery I discovered. Sometimes they acted snooty or disgusted. At first I felt uneasy and out of place, but after a while, whenever they acted disgusted, I made a point of asking the price of each piece. They would turn so red and swell up so much that it was comical. I remember hating some of these people, but at the same time, I wanted to be rich like them. Back then, I thought being rich was the solution to everything. Four blocks from where we lived, there was still another world. 84th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus. Before it was torn down, it was voted the worst block in the city. When I was a kid, I never would have imagined that people could live so bad. Living in some of those apartments was like living in a coffin. I swear, there was one building that you could walk past in the summer, and it stunk so bad it made you drop to your knees. Usually, I'd just sit on some stoop and watch the street. There was always something going on. Men standing around with the do-rags on their head, covering greasy processed hairdos, making deals, laughing and talking and looking at the woman passing by. Drunks and fights and drunken fights. The street was always alive and swarming with people. Survival and life were hanging out in the open like laundry for everyone out to see. Arguments, dirty deals, misery, and malice ran out into the streets like pus from open sores. There was something horrible and foreboding about the street, yet exciting at the same time. Lil Bit, who went to my school, lived on 84th Street. Her nickname was Lil Bit, but I called her Fruit Fly because she was crazy about fruit. I liked to hang out with her because she was a good walker. We could walk for hours without getting tired. One day she asked me to come with her to get something. One day she asked me to come with her to get something from her house. When we got there, I couldn't believe it. I thought I had seen messed up cribs before. I thought I had seen some messed up cribs before, but hers took the cake. She lived in a tiny little pea green closet of a room, covered from wall to wall with roaches. I just kept staring at a little bit. She walked around in that horror house like it was normal. Let me see. Real quick. Good morning. Let me see. Where was I? I just kept staring at a little bit. She walked around in that whorehouse like it was normal. She didn't even try to kill the roaches. She just brushed them aside if they got in her way. When I left, I itched and scratched for hours. When I met Lil Bit's mother and started to get to know her and some of her neighbors, I got my first lesson in hopelessness. Lil Bit's mother used to work in factories and in laundries as a presser, but she had burned her hand real bad or was on some kind of disability. She lived from day to day and from check to check. She was always sick, and sometimes her cough was so bad I thought she was going to die at any moment, at any minute. She acted like she was too tired or too weak to do anything. They had a hot plate, but most of the time they didn't even cook. They ate sandwiches, usually lunch meat on white bread. Lil Bit's mother never went anywhere except to the clinic or to the welfare office or to the bar in Amsterdam. Sometimes she would get drunk and start crying about some man she used to go with. She didn't know anything about what was going on in the world, and she didn't really seem to care. 84th Street was her world, and other worlds didn't really exist. When I was with Lil Bit and her mother, I felt all kinds of things. Sometimes disgust and anger, because they accepted anything and lived in any old kind of way. Other times, I felt sorry for them. And still, other times, I relaxed and enjoyed them because they were so easy and down to earth. But whenever I hung out with them, it was down on the stoop. I would never go up into that house. Evelyn kept my excursions at a bare minimum, though. She was strict and didn't play around. Every day after school, I had to be in the house by 4 o'clock, and she would call home just to see that I had arrived safely. Evelyn didn't want me in the street too much because she had said the neighborhood was too bad and she didn't want me to get in any trouble. And she also wanted me to stay at home and do my homework. After homework, I read. I had never been too fond of television, and besides, Evelyn had an excellent library. Those books were like food to me. Fiction and poetry were my favorite. Although I liked history and psychology too. I also liked to read about other countries and about all the different religions in the world. The only books I had never touched were Evelyn's law books. They were dry and boring and Greek to me. Evelyn was a store of knowledge, and she knew about a whole range of subjects. We were always discussing or debating some range of subjects. We were always Hanging out with Evelyn, I started to think that I was cool and sophisticated and grown up and that I knew it all. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was just too cool. Evelyn and I went to museums and art galleries and the theater. On Broadway, off Broadway, she was turning me on to so many things. I started to view movies as an art form rather than just entertainment. I was learning what and how. I was learning what and how to order at restaurants, and my vocabulary and control of the English language were expanding greatly. But life with Evelyn definitely had its ups and downs. Sometimes we got along famously, and other times it was terrible. Evelyn was super honest, and she could not tolerate my lying. I would try to tell the truth and try to be honest, but sometimes, especially in a tight situation, I would lie. I had been in the habit of lying, and it was easy for me to fall back into that old pattern. But it wasn't futile to learn. It wasn't futile to lie to Evelyn because she was a lawyer and would cross-examine me until I would inevitably trip myself up. Little by little, I got out of the habit, but it was a long and constant battle between us. Our financial situation had its ups and downs. One week we were rich, and the next week we were poor. Evelyn was determined to be a trial lawyer and be in private practice. Most of her clients were black and poor, and most of the time they didn't have money to pay her. But Evelyn would defend them anyway. She was always up in arms about some injustice or another. I used to call her the last angry woman. But whenever somebody did pay her, we were rich. We would go out and celebrate. For a week or so, we would eat steaks, lamb chops, went out to restaurants, took taxis, and next week we'd be right back. And the next week we'd be right back to the riding subways and eating hamburgers. Evelyn was generous and extravagant. She had absolutely no head for business. I usually did shopping for us since I was more tight-fisted and practical. Once in a while, I'd be tempted to give myself a 5-finger discount, but Evelyn was so honest that it rubbed off on me. I was becoming so goody-goody, I couldn't stand myself. I really underwent a great change. Sorry, excuse me. Evelyn had great plans for my future. I was going to junior high school. I was going to junior high school 44. But Evelyn wasn't satisfied with the education I was receiving. JHS 44 wasn't a bad school, but we were learning at a much slower pace than at my school in Queens. I don't remember too much about the school except for the music class. Most of the class was black or Puerto Rican, and we all loved music. But we hated music class with a passion. The teacher talked to us as though we were inferior savages, incapable of appreciating the finer things in life. She lectured about symphonies and concertos and sonatas and like that, and the like, in a snooty tone. A boy would mimic the gestures and expressions of the teacher, and the rest of us would giggle and snicker as she played music. The teacher became more and more exasperated, saying, "Listen, can't you listen? Don't you have ears? Can't you appreciate anything? I'm trying to get you to appreciate music, and you all act as though you're deaf. I want you to stop talking. I want you to stop talking and listen. Do you hear me? We got louder and louder, and the teacher became more and more disgusted. She would scream at us and call us names like hooligans, and we would return her insults. We hated her because she thought the music she liked was so superior. She didn't recognize that we had our own music that we loved. For her, there was no other music except Beethoven and Mozart. To her, we were uncultured. For her, Latin music, jazz, rhythm, and blues were trashy, and we were trash. She was a racist who would have denied it. She was a racist who would have denied it to the bitter end. A lot of people don't know how many ways racism can manifest itself, and in how many ways people fight against it. When I think of racists, how Eurocentric our so-called education is, When I think of racists, I see where I messed up. When I think of how racist, how Eurocentric our so-called education in America is, it staggers my mind. When I think back to some of those kids who were labeled troublemakers and problem students, I realize that many of them were unsung heroes. Who fought to maintain some sense of dignity and self-worth. Evelyn strongly suggested that I enter Cathedral High School in the 9th grade. I was not at all happy about the idea, since I hated wearing a uniform, and Catholic schools had a reputation for being so strict. But Evelyn kept on strongly suggesting, and I got the message. I didn't mind the Catholic religious part of it, though, since I was going to Mass regularly, and I was kind of holy that year. I took the test for Cathedral and passed, and it was firm that I was going to enter Cathedral that next September. I even started to feel happy about it. It was a change, and I always have been a person who likes a change of scenery. I usually spent my weekends with one of my girlfriends or with my mother as much as possible. Tony was cool to hang out with, and she knew where all the parties were. But we never had deep conversations, so we never got really close. Bonnie and I met through Tony, and we began what was to become a best friend relationship, with the argument about Abraham Lincoln. We argued for hours until Bonnie's aunt told us to shut up and go to bed, since neither of us knew what we were talking about. Bonnie lived in the same building my mother lived in, and after that night, we became close friends and talked about every subject on earth. Bonnie knew more than I did about what was happening in the world, and we spent hours talking about Medgar Evers, sit-ins, freedom riders, etc. We began to write poetry about love and black people, and sometimes we wrote morbid poetry about hate and death. As soon as we finished a poem, we'd call each other and read it. After a while, we read poetry together. Dorothy Parker and Edna St. Vincent Millie? I don't know. And then Edna St. Vincent, Edna St. Vincent were our idols. We read everything they wrote, and even memorized their poems. After that, we read all different kinds of poets. We were deep, and we were forever in the library or a bookstore, trying to find another poet who was deep too. The more we read, the more we wrote, The more we read, the more we wrote, and it came in handy in the streets. If we didn't like somebody, or if we had a dispute with someone, we wrote a poem about them. We made up all kinds of dozen poems, and we laughed our heads off. We were young and old, happy and sad at the same time. Usually, every summer I went down south to visit my grandparents. When they had a business on the beach, I loved it. But they had lost two different buildings on the beach, both destroyed by hurricanes. After the last one was leveled, they operated a restaurant on Red Cross Street. I liked working in the restaurant sometimes, but it wasn't as much fun as working on the beach. One of the last summers I spent down south, the NAACP rented a building a few doors down from my grandparents' restaurant, which was a great source of interest to me. I was forever walking by, standing in the doorway, or sliding discreetly into the building to see what was going on. I could hear them talk about integrating the South, about sitting in, praying in, singing in, and about nonviolence. I was glad because I surely wanted segregation to end. I had grown up exposed to degrading, dehumanizing sides of segregation. I remember that when traveled from north to south and vice versa, we really felt the sting of segregation more acutely than at other times. We would drive for hours without being able to stop anywhere. Sometimes we'd pull into a filthy old gas station, buy gas, and then be told that we were not permitted to use their filthy old bathroom because we were black. Keep going, I'm sorry. Keep going. We're not lose their filthy old bathroom because we were black. I can remember clearly squatting in the bushes with mosquitoes biting my bare buttocks, and my grandmother handing me toilet paper because we could not find a place with a colored bathroom. Sometimes we were hungry, but there was no place to eat. Other times we were sleepy, and there was no hotel or motel that would admit us. If I sit up and add up all the colored toilets and drinking fountains in my life, and all the back of the box buses, or the Jim Crow railway cars, or the places I couldn't go, it adds up to one great ball of anger. And so, when I saw these NAACP people, I was ready to do whatever it was that they were going to do. But they were very confusing. One day, I was hanging around the office, and two men were talking about nonviolence and self-control. Then he walked around the room asking everybody questions. What would you do if they pushed you? Nothing. I just keep on doing what I came to do. What would you do if they kicked you? I prayed to the Lord to forgive them their sins. What would you do if they spit on you? I just go on singing. Well, that was too much for me. I could take someone pushing me, hitting me, kicking me, but to sit there and let and I'm not okay. But to sit there and let some white person spit on me, well, just the idea of it made me want to fight. To me, if someone spit on you, it was worse than hitting you. I agree with that. No. I agree with that. To me, if someone spit on you, it was worse than hitting you, especially if they spit in your face. I tried to tell myself that I would just sit there and take it. But every muscle in my body, every instinct I had, rebelled against it. The man continued around the room, asking everybody the same questions. When he came to me, I answered the same too, except for the spitting question. I don't know, I told him. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't know? I just don't know. Well, little sister, we can see you're just not ready. If you want your freedom, there's no sacrifice too big to make. Everybody looked at me as if I was some kind of stupid idiot. I felt bad, but I still couldn't get used to the idea of letting somebody spit on me. The man said I wasn't ready, and I had to agree with him. When I think back to those days, I feel such an admiration and respect. That's a good song. When I think back to those days, I feel such admiration and respect for the spirit of the struggle and sacrifice that my people exhibited. That went up against white mobs, water hoses, vicious dogs, the Ku Klux Klan, trigger-happy knights dick-and-wielding police, armed only with their belief in justice and their desire for freedom. I remember how I felt in those days. I wanted to be American just like any other American. I wanted a piece of American's apple pie. I believe we could get our freedom just by appealing to the consciousness of white people. I believe that the North Let me see what time it is. It's already 8:40. Just keep going. Probably finish out this chapter. Then we're gonna move down to the park. Oh, I only got one page left. Yeah, I'll probably finish out this chapter and move down to the park. Let's see. I believe we can get our freedom just by appealing to the consciences of white people. I believe that the North was really interested in integration and civil rights and equal rights. I used to go around saying our country, our president, our government. When the national anthem was played or the Pledge of Allegiance spoken, I stood at attention and felt proud. I don't know what in the hell I was feeling proud about, but I felt the juice of patriotism running through my blood. I believe that if the South could be like the North, then everything would be alright. I believe that we black people were really making progress, and that the government, the president, and the Supreme Court, and the Congress were behind us. So we couldn't go wrong. I believe that integration was really the solution to all our problems. I believe that if white people could go to school with us, live next to us, work next to us, they could see what was really good. They could see that we were really good people, and that would stop being prejudiced against us. I believe that America was a really good country, like my teacher said in school, the greatest country on the face of the earth. I grew up believing that, really believing it. And now, 20 years later, it seems like a bad joke. Nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. Once you study and really get a good understanding of the way the system in the United States works, then you see, without a doubt, that the civil rights movement never had a chance of succeeding. White people, whether they are from the North or the South, whether it was the 1960s or 80s, whether it was in 1960 or 1980, benefit from the oppression of black people. Those who believe the president or the vice president and the Congress and the Supreme Court run this country are sadly mistaken. The almighty dollar is king. Those who have the most money control the country. And through campaign contributions, buy and sell presidents, congressmen, and judges. The one who pass laws and enforce the laws that benefit their benefactor. The rich have always used racism to maintain power, to hate someone, to discriminate against someone, and to attack them because of their racial characteristics of the most primitive, reactionary, ignorant ways that exist. A war between the races will help nobody and free nobody, and should be avoided at all costs. But a one-sided war, with black people as the targets and white people shooting the guns, is worse. We will be criminally negligent, however, if we do not deal with racism and racist violence, and if we do not prepare to defend ourselves against it. This is a little poem titled Stranger. It's a little poem titled Stranger. Everything you love is from a different world. Hungry, you turn your nose up at my peas and rice. Okay, this is the autobiography of Assata Shakur. We're on chapter 9, a little over halfway through. We're gonna wrap this live up. Been reading for about almost 3 hours. We'll wrap this live up. We're gonna move down to the park. We're gonna have our breakfast going on. So about 9 a.m. to noon. Come down, get some breakfast, read a couple books, and gonna play some speeches down there as well. So 9 a.m. to noon. This is gonna go on every weekend. Every weekend we'll have a free breakfast.